Welcome to WBZ and CBSN Boston's continuing coverage of the Boston mayoral race. On September 14th, a nonpartisan preliminary election will narrow the field of candidates to two. WBZ TV and CBSN Boston are providing voters with a chance to directly compare the candidates' responses to four questions on issues you've said in poll after poll are most important to you. And in this segment, we welcome Acting Mayor Kim Janey. Mayor, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
So let's start with the city's housing crisis, where even large infusions of public money and pressure on developers just haven't yielded enough affordable housing to meet the demand. A recent Brookings Institution study identified as a major problem, quote, exclusionary zoning by affluent, mostly white communities that exacerbates racial and economic segregation in the region. So it seems Chapter 40B, the state's affordable housing law aimed at mitigating exclusionary zoning, isn't getting the job done. What will you do as mayor to push suburban governments and Beacon Hill to help fix this problem?
Thank you so much, John. We know that housing was a big issue of concern, a crisis, if you will, even before COVID-19, and COVID-19 has only worsened the situation. As mayor, to address the immediate crisis, started in my very first week with $50 million investment in rental relief fund, have been a big advocate around the eviction moratorium staying in place. The $50 million has already helped more than 3,400 households in Boston, and we continue to do aggressive outreach. As it relates to homeownership, I think that is one of the important ways that we also can stabilize our communities, and I have made significant investments, taking down payment assistance for first-time home buyers from $10,000 to $40,000. You're absolutely right that this is a regional issue. Boston has done a lot to address housing and making sure that we are building, and we need to continue to build and grow our city. But we also need others to step up. I am a big champion in terms of state legislation that will certainly help Boston do more in terms of building. I've just filed a transfer fee legislation that would generate $65 million for the creation and preservation of affordable housing in Boston. And we need for our surrounding towns to also do more of their share. And so I am proud to serve with the Metro Mayors Coalition, which are mayors from across Greater Boston. We meet regularly on a number of issues, from public transit to COVID-19, of course, and to all kinds of crises that we face as a region. And we need for others to step up and do more of this work. And when we push together, I think we will be able to see a difference, a change. And so it requires leadership here in Boston, which I have certainly demonstrated, but also working with the state legislature, working with the governor, and working with mayors across different municipalities in our region.
You think Chapter 40B needs to be toughened up?
Well, we can look at that. We can certainly, what really needs is for it to be implemented. But we can certainly strengthen the language, but we need for folks to do what is needed right now, particularly given COVID. We know that this has put a strain on everyone. And so we need to do more, and we need to do more as a region.
Mayor, this year the city is spending millions on a marketing campaign to persuade outsiders that Boston is, quote, all-inclusive, an explicit effort to counter the nagging image of Boston as a racially unwelcoming environment. Does that message match the reality of life here for people of color in your view? And if it doesn't, what do you intend to do about that beyond this ad campaign?
Well, John, I know a lot has been said about Boston's reputation. And, for me, I'm focused on our reality. Certainly, I know, as someone who grew up in the city of Boston, was bused during the battle to desegregate Boston public schools in the 1970s at 11 years old, saw firsthand racism play out in our schools with racial slurs and rocks thrown at me and other students. But as I sit here as the first mayor, that is a woman, the first Black mayor, I also realize how far our city has come. It does not mean we have solved everything. My entire career has been focused on equity, inclusion, access, and opportunity for all of Boston residents, particularly those who have been left out. The All-Inclusive campaign, which I was so proud to launch earlier on in my administration, and then invest an additional $1 million, I think is an important one. It is the first time, John, that I have seen my city, the city that I love, reflect me and how we talk about ourselves. And it really made me emotional the first time I saw that video, because it was the first time that I saw myself. And for me, as a Bostonian who grew up here in the city, I love the Sitco sign over in Kenmore above Fenway Park. But I also love the Simcoe sign on the bridge in Mattapan. Both are important and both represent Boston. And while I want to bring more folks into our city, it is very important as we think about our economic recovery, as we think about how we grow our city, and for folks to see the rich diversity that is here. Boston is still a majority people of color city, but we've got to make sure that it works for everyone and that we're doing everything we can to promote what is special about Boston. And for me, it's our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are amazing. It's our people, the people of Boston, our small businesses. That is what the All-Inclusive campaign does. And we still have to do work on the ground to make sure that we are dealing with the persistent inequities that exist.
Plus, you can get a better hot dog under the Simcoe sign than you can under the Sitco sign. I think we would agree on that. All right, let's move to education, Mayor. Last time we checked, Boston's METCO program, which you participated in, which buses more than 3,000 children of color to suburban schools, had a waiting list of 15,000 families. There are thousands more on waiting lists to get into the city's charter schools. These families obviously want an alternative to the conventional public schools. What, if anything, will you do for them as mayor, as elected mayor?
Well, John, I am mayor of every single resident of our city, regardless of what choice they make for their children. I am someone who believes that parents want the best for their children, and that they will seek that out whatever they think is best. And as someone who has gone through Boston Public Schools, someone who is the parent of a BPS graduate, someone who dedicated her career to education advocacy, I continue to invest in our traditional public schools, in BPS. 75% of all children who live in our city attend BPS. And I want to make sure that they have a great experience, that our schools are highly chosen, that we are supporting our educators, that we are investing in our school buildings, that we have an academic rigor that can compete with other schools that parents may be looking at. I want for parents to choose BPS. If they choose other schools, I support them still. They are all our children, and parents have a right to choose what they think is best, but we will continue to invest in BPS and making sure that we are bringing our schools up to the heights and standards that our children deserve. They deserve to attend schools that can give them a world-class education in a world-class city like Boston, so that they can go on to attend the best universities that we have right here in our own city. And that is what I want for all school children, regardless of what schools they attend.
In the short term, do you think more charter school seats are a good idea?
Well, I have not been a fan of expanding charter schools. We need to address the funding formula that has exacerbated a deficit, a structural deficit with the traditional public schools here in Boston, and that has not been addressed. And so we've got to continue to make sure that we're doing everything to support what happens in our classrooms. And again, I, respect the choices that parents make. And I want for all of our school children, regardless of where they go to school, METCO, private school, Catholic school, charter school, or BPS, to have a wonderful experience. But we will continue to invest in BPS, support our educators, and make sure that there is the academic rigor that our students deserve.
All right, finally, let's turn to public safety. This year is the 25th anniversary of the birth of Boston's Operation Ceasefire, otherwise known as the Boston Miracle, an innovative effort to reverse an epidemic of deadly gun violence based on unprecedented cooperation between Boston police, federal, state, and county law enforcement, clergy, and street workers. For years, it was a national model, then it fell apart. Mayor, do you understand why it fell apart? What will you do to fix it? Or do you prefer an alternative model to the Boston Miracle?
Let me say this. I am certainly very appreciative of all initiatives that bring people together. And when we see results that work. Right now, I am focused on the future of our city and what is happening on the ground. I live, John, in a neighborhood where there is gun violence, unfortunately, right on my street. It has happened in front of my house on numerous occasions, in the street, in the park that is across the street from my house on numerous occasions. And so this issue is something that hits me personally. And I understand the trauma that is associated with it and the need to make sure that we have a good trauma response to these issues. I am proud to say, as mayor of Boston, that right now our homicides are down in 2021 as compared to 2020. Our fatal shootings are down. Our non-fatal shootings are down. We have gun recovery and gun arrest up. I launched a summer safety plan at the beginning of the end of spring last year, along with the district attorney, Rachel Rollins, and I'm proud to see the progress that we have made here. Let me be really clear. While all of this is down, homicides, fatal shootings, non-fatal shootings, and that's progress, I don't want to see any shootings in our community. Any shooting is problematic. And we know that we've got to focus on prevention, intervention. We have to address trauma. We have to make sure that there are economic opportunities, and we've got to focus on education, the subject that we just talked about. That is how we break generational cycles of crime, of violence in our community. We cannot do it if we're not addressing all three of those things: education, economic opportunities, and trauma. That is the work that I continue to focus on as mayor of Boston, so that we can all live in neighborhoods where there is safety, healing, justice, and peace. That is what Boston residents deserve. And I will also add, John, as mayor, I have done more to make sure that there is transparency and accountability than any of my predecessors, and releasing files, as well as how we imagine policing. I've recently launched a pilot investing millions of dollars with an alternative response, a co-response, and a community response to how we handle mental health crises in our city. That is going to help us move forward in a way to really make sure we're dealing with trauma and that we are not over-policing certain communities here in Boston.
Mayor, if people want to find out more about you and your candidacy, how can they do that?
Well, thank you so much for asking, John. I hope that people will visit my website, mayorjaney.com. Also stop by my campaign office on Center Street in Jamaica Plain. There is a lot of work to do as we get to the prelim on September 14th. There is early voting. I certainly hope to earn the votes and the support of all those who are watching, so that we can continue to do this work together. I've accomplished a lot in the last 4 months, and want to bring Boston forward so that we are creating a stronger city, a stronger Boston, and a Boston that is more equitable, just, and resilient. This isn't about going back to normal. This is about going better, where everyone is included and everyone has a voice, and we're going to do that work together. So certainly hope to earn the votes of folks who are watching. Thank you so much, John, for the opportunity.
And thank you, Acting Mayor Kim Janey. We urge you to click on the other candidate interviews on this website and watch them on demand. And of course, most importantly, go to the polls on Tuesday, September 14th. Cast your vote. Then watch it count on our complete election coverage on WBZ TV and here on CBSN Boston. Thank you very much for watching.